an astounding press conference at the Pentagon just about an hour and a half ago, where all of the evidence was laid out for the media to see about how devastating this attack was on the Iran nuclear facilities. But Pete Hegseth had to waste his time explaining why he referred to all of the pilots as boys when one of them was not a boy. Happy as we are for the media to actually finally figure out a distinction between men and women, which, many of these organizations still, you're not allowed to talk like that in the coffee room or at the cubicles, but apparently they're angry that Pete Hegseth is making the distinction. As happy as we are that they've done that, we want to show you Pete Hegseth hammering back on that criticism, and we will in just a moment. But first, the real crux of this press conference, the thing that should be the focus, is what our military did to Iran. Take a look at our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, raising Cain, showing you the video evidence of what these bunker busters can do. That's the impact that these bombs have after being dropped from 30,000 feet or so. But then the real penetration goes on underground.
You'll see inside the mission space.
Now, I just want to tell you, this, by the way, obviously is not video footage of the actual bombing in Iran. We didn't have cameras set up inside. This is a demo that they do to show you what these bombs do. But it's to explain why in the satellite imagery you just see a crater where the bomb goes in. It doesn't explode on impact. It goes deep underground, hundreds of feet underground, and then, as you just saw there, that's where the bomb actually detonates, which is what happened to this nuclear facility.
Unlike a normal surface bomb, you won't see an impact crater because they're designed to deeply bury and then function. I know there's been a lot of questions about that. All 6 weapons at each vent at Fordo went exactly where they were intended to go. A bomb has 3 effects that causes damage: blast, fragmentation, and overpressure. In this case, the primary kill mechanism in the mission space was a mix of overpressure and blast ripping through the open tunnels and destroying critical hardware. The majority of the damage we assessed based on our extensive modeling was a blast layer combined with the impulse extending from the shock. Imagine what this looks like 6 times over.
That's right, and that's what happened down there. But of course, CNN is still maintaining and standing by their reporter who says it's just minimal damage, probably, nothing to see here. Okay, then Hegseth takes the podium and goes right at the media, again, for deceptively reporting information to their viewers and to their readers. This is a time for the facts and for truth. And if you don't have the full story, maybe you should hang on to whatever's been anonymously leaked for political purposes, take a critical eye, ask a secondary or maybe even a 3rd, 4th, and 5th question, and then report to your viewers the entirety of the story, not just the little sliver that you want to put out there to undermine Donald Trump. Here's Hegseth.
The bottom line here. President Trump directed the most complex and secretive military operation in history. And it was a resounding success, resulting in a ceasefire agreement and the end of the 12-day war. There's been a lot of discussion about what happened and what didn't happen. Step back for a second. Because of decisive military action, President Trump created the conditions to end the war, decimating, choose your word, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities.
But yes, he said choose your word because you literally have anchors, teleprompter readers with fine haircuts on primetime cable and broadcast news saying, but is it really obliterated? I mean, how obliterated is it? Why did Trump say obliterated if it's only, set back 5 years? That's not obliterated. I wish I were joking, but that's really what they're trying to hang their hat on. More Hegseth.
Whether it's fake news, CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times, there's been fawning coverage of a preliminary assessment. I've had a chance to read it. Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment from DIA. I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike, when it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment. It's preliminary. It points out that it's not been coordinated with the intelligence community at all. There's low confidence in this particular report. It says in the report there are gaps in the information. It says in the report multiple linchpin assumptions are what this assessment, a linchpin assumption, you know what that is? That means your entire premise is predicated on a linchpin. If you're wrong, everything else is wrong. And yet, and still, this report acknowledges it's likely severe damage. Again, this is preliminary, but leaked because someone had an agenda to try to muddy the waters and make it look like this historic strike wasn't successful. I'm going to get to the chairman in a moment because he's going to lay out the particulars for you based on his professional military experience. But here's what other folks are saying. The DIA that put that report out says that this is a preliminary low-confidence report and will continue to be refined as additional intelligence becomes available. How about the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission? The devastating U.S. strikes on Fordow destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility inoperable. Have any of these quotes made their way into the New York Times or the Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN? Any of these quotes? How about this one? This is a new one from the UN, the United Nations. No friend of the United States, or certainly Israel often. Here's the head of the UN Atomic Energy Agency this morning, Rafael Grossi. U.S. and Israeli strikes caused enormous damage to Iran's nuclear sites. Don't take my word for it. How about the IDF's chief of staff? I can say here that the assessment is that we significantly damaged the nuclear program, setting it back by years. I repeat, years. The Iranian foreign minister, the spokesman, our nuclear installations have been badly damaged, that's for sure. I'm sure that's an understatement. John Radcliffe, the director of the CIA, putting out a statement just last night. CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence from a historically reliable, very different than preliminary assessment with low confidence. He's saying historically reliable and accurate source and method that several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over the course of years. CIA continues to collect additional reliably sourced information to keep appropriate decision makers fully informed. How about DNI Tulsi Gabbard yesterday? She writes, and I quote, "New intelligence confirms what POTUS has stated numerous times. Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed." Institute for Science and International Security President David Albright, overall, Israel and U.S. attacks have effectively destroyed Iran's centrifuge enrichment program. Time and time again, I can go down the list. Those that understand, those that see, those that do proper assessments recognize that what the United States military did was historic.
Historic, and how many other independent agencies and foreign entities do you need to cite that say all the same thing? But CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, and everyone else who, instead of wanting to report the facts and information to their viewers and their readers, had one agenda, one goal, and that is to undermine Trump. Trump can't be allowed to have a positive news cycle. Trump cannot be allowed to buck all of the warnings that it was going to be World War III. He cannot be allowed to actually stand and take credit for doing something that presidents before him promised to do and were never able to do it. But the Secretary of Defense wasn't done. He had more. It was glorious.
And I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard. It's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump. Because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective. Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented them isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful. How many stories have been written about how hard it is to, I don't know, fly a plane for 36 hours? Has MSNBC done that story? Has Fox? Have we done the story how hard that is? Have we done it 2 or 3 times so that American people understand? How about how difficult it is to shoot a drone from an F-15 or 16 or F-22 or F-35? Or what it's like to man a Patriot battery? Or how hard it is to refuel midair? Giving the American people an understanding of how complex and sophisticated this mission really was. There are so many aspects of what our brave men and women did that, because of the hatred of this press corps, are undermined because people are trying to leak and spin that it wasn't successful. It's irresponsible. And folks in this room are privy to that information because of the proximity here in the Pentagon. It's an important responsibility. And time again, classified information is leaked or peddled for political purposes to try to make the president look bad. And what's really happening is you're undermining the success of incredible B-2 pilots and incredible F-35 pilots and incredible refuelers and incredible air defenders who accomplished their mission, set back a nuclear program in ways that other presidents would have dreamed. How about we celebrate that? How about we talk about how special America is, that only we have these capabilities? I think it's too much to ask, unfortunately, for the fake news. So we're used to that. But we also have an opportunity to stand at the podium and read the truth of what's really happening. And the reality is, you want to call it destroyed, you want to call it defeated, you want to call it obliterated, choose your word. This was an historically successful attack, and we should celebrate it as Americans. And it gives us a chance to have peace, chance to have a deal, and an opportunity to prevent a nuclear Iran, which is something President Trump talked about for 20 years, and no other presidents had the courage to actually do.
You know, a lot of people questioned why Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was chosen for the job. A lot of people pointed out that he only reached the rank of major in the military. He's been out of the military for quite some time. He's never run an organization as big as the Pentagon. He hasn't worked for any of the defense contractors like other secretaries of defense have done in the past, or reached the rank of general or what have you when he was in the military. A lot of people questioned whether, as a weekend Fox News anchor, as he was sort of dismissively described, as to whether he had what it took to run the Pentagon. And I understood a lot of those questions. I didn't understand the criticisms or the vitriol against it, but I did understand the questions because he was an outside-the-box kind of nominee to run the Pentagon. And you may question why he got the job. Well, what you just saw is why he got the job. Because our military loves him. Our military loves the fact that he was a warrior himself and fought in the very wars that many of them are still fighting. They love the fact that he can go out and do PRT with them at 5:30 in the morning and keep up. And they love the fact that he will sit at that podium and defend them more than he'll defend the president, because he loves them and they love him. And he's effective at doing it. And because he was a weekend anchor at Fox News, he knows how the media operates. He knows full well how the media operates. And what you just saw right there, that's the bottom line. I would only add to the litany of stories that the media failed to cover with regard to the incredible warriors that carried out this perfect mission. Pete, let's not forget the multiple Tomahawk missiles that were fired from a submarine underwater. That's pretty impressive, too. Why haven't we done a story about how great our submariners are? Or, for that matter, the crews of the Gettysburg and the Stockdale, who have been in the Gulf since October 7th and have had to fend off attacks from the Houthis, funded by the Iranians, for the last year and a half. Our seamen, our sailors, our naval officers have been under fire by drones and by rockets. They've had to defend our ships, the Gettysburg and the Stockdale, and nobody talks about it. Hegseth will. Hegseth does. But the media, after being properly chastised by the Secretary of Defense, it was time for them to start asking questions, and they started to hone in on the really important issues of the day, the real important issues of this strike against Iran. Take a look at this.
Why not acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission? The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something,
I'll let Pete respond to this in a second. Can I call you Pete, Secretary Hegseth? Thank you for that. I'll let Pete respond in a second, but you're a reporter in the room. You're getting this briefing about this attack. You're finally getting the facts and information because, let's face it, it's been 5 days. 4 days. It's remarkable that we have as much information about this attack right now as we do, but you're getting the briefing, you're getting all the information. It's time for you to ask questions so that your readers and your listeners and your viewers can be better informed. And you decide that one of the questions you want to ask is, hey, how come you congratulated the boys on this mission when one of the pilots was a girl? Okay, I guess if that girl, woman, pilot for the Air Force was my daughter, I guess I'd want that question answered. But actually, I don't think I would care, to tell you the truth. I want you to watch Hegseth as this question is asked, because his reaction is phenomenal. And then I'll let the clip play all the way.
Acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission. The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something like our boys and bombers, see, this is the kind of thing the press does, right? Of course, the chairman mentioned a female bomber pilot. That's fantastic. She's fantastic. She's a hero. I want more female bomber pilots. I hope the men and women of our country sign up to do such brave and audacious things. But when you spin it as, because I say our boys and bombers as a common phrase, I'll keep saying things like that, whether they're men or women. I'm very proud of that female pilot, just like I'm very proud of those male pilots. And I don't care if it's a male or a female in that cockpit, and the American people don't care. But it's the obsession with race and gender in this department that's changed priorities. We don't do that anymore.
We don't do that anymore is the best answer of the universe, Secretary Hegseth. I do a morning radio show every day in Washington, D.C., and my team, my co-host, my producer, people that I work with on the show, some of the researchers, all women. There's only one guy other than myself that works on the show, my board operator, but they're all women. And during the show or at the end of the show or whatever time, I'll say, hey, great job, guys. You guys are awesome. And not one of them actually says, Guy, how dare you? For God's sake, this is about human beings speak, for crying out loud. But of course, most reporters who work in Washington, D.C. can't relate to your typical human being. Listen, whether America and our military just obliterated or decimated or destroyed Iran's nuclear program or not, I guess you can pick whatever words you want and describe it however you'd like. But this press conference today, I think you have to acknowledge that the only way to properly describe how the Secretary of Defense handled the media and their behavior in reporting this story, this was a destruction. He destroyed them today. And here's another example.
Highly enriched uranium. Do you have certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Fordo Mountain, or some of it, because there were satellite photos that showed more than a dozen trucks there 2 days in advance? Are you certain none of that highly enriched uranium was moved?
Of course, we're watching every single aspect, but Jennifer, you've been about the worst, the one who misrepresents the most intentionally. What the president says. I'm familiar.
Report about the ventilation shafts on Saturday night, and in fact, I was the first to describe the B-2 bombers, the refueling, the entire mission with great accuracy. So I take issue with that.
I appreciate you acknowledging that this was the first the most successful mission based on operational security that this department has done since you've been here, and I appreciate that. So we're looking at all aspects of intelligence and making sure we have a sense of what was where.
That was Jennifer Griffin. She's the Pentagon reporter for Fox News. In other words, that's Secretary Hegseth's former colleague at the network they both worked for. And he just said to her face that she was among the worst in how they were covering this mission and the President of the United States. That's going to leave a mark in more ways than one. And it'll be interesting, by the way, to see if Fox goes after Hegseth and the Pentagon and the White House to defend their reporter the way CNN felt obligated to defend their lying reporter over the intelligence assessment story. A remarkable, remarkable press conference. I mean, again, I guess it's still in doubt whether Trump and our military obliterated, destroyed decimated Iran's nuclear capabilities. It sure looks like, based on the evidence we learned today at the Pentagon, that that's exactly what our military did. And then in turn, because of the way the American media comported themselves over the last 48 hours in trying to attack Trump and undermine the military's efforts, well, today, in addition to destroying the Iran nuclear capabilities, the Secretary of Defense was able to destroy whatever was left of the credibility of the American media.